Hello and welcome. I am Gimba Umar. Tonight, the President addresses world leaders at the 70th United Nations Assembly. President Buhari asked member nations to act on the words of the new Sustainable Development Agenda. An attack on the office of the Department of State Services, the DSS, leaves 4 people dead in Lokoja, the Kogi state capital. And victims of the flood in Kaduna State count their losses. NEMA distributes relief materials there. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani asked for an investigation into the stampede at the annual Hajj pilgrimage.
On business news tonight, NNPC plans to receive forensic auditors to look into its financial statements.
And on sports news, Nigeria's D Tigers bounced back from opening game loss to beat Egypt 97-68 at the FIBA Afrobasket in Cameroon.
We begin tonight from the United Nations General Assembly holding in New York, where world leaders have adopted the most sweeping agenda ever of global goals to combat poverty, inequality and climate change, described by the United Nations Secretary General as a to-do list for people and planet. In his address to the 193 member nations of the Assembly, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari says that there's the need for a greater global cooperation, urging member nations to act on the words of the new Sustainable Development Agenda. He reiterated Nigeria's commitment to the pursuit of transparent and accountable fiscal and economic management.
Not for want of commitment that previous initiatives have failed or could not be fully realized. What seemed to be lacking in the past were political will and the required global partnership to pursue and implement the programs to which we committed ourselves. It enjoins global consensus. We have agreed to deliver as one and to leave no one behind. This is a promise worth keeping. I wish to reiterate Nigeria's commitment to the pursuit of transparent and accountable fiscal and economic management. We are taking measures to improve and streamline internal generation of revenue and to plug all loopholes that have led to illicit capital flight from Nigeria. We are also putting in place mechanisms to prevent oil theft and other criminal practices that are detrimental to our economy. We are taking concrete steps to address present environmental challenges, especially in cleaning up degraded ecosystems caused by oil spillage, land erosion, desertification, and floods. The threat posed by climate change is real and present in our country. It is my hope that as we embark on this renewed journey, we will match our words with deeds, so that 2030, when this assembly will meet, the people of all races and creed will say that we have kept faith with each other.
Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari. In the meantime, the chairman of Zenith Bank, Jim Ovie, has commended the proposed United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, but calls for a cut in poverty levels in Africa by ensuring the SDGs innovate and deeply deploy technology to improve on consumption and production practices. Mr. Ovie also spoke on the issue of the environment, which is gradually threatening economic development on the continent.
Has been a paradigm shift for Africa. Its economic growth has been fueled by the continent's ownership of 1/3 of the planet's reserves, 1/10 of oil, and 2/3 of the world's diamonds. This resource cost, while stimulating economic growth, has come at a high ecological price that's unsustainable. Africa is increasingly integrating into the global economy. We have a huge opportunity to do such within a more ecologically friendly and sustainable basis. Africa currently uses only 7% of potential hydropower, waste accounting for 1 in 6 of the world's population. Unfortunately, only 3.1% of the world's electricity is consumed in Africa. Harnessing renewable, abundant resources offers Africa the opportunity to technologically leapfrog its energy constraints in a progressively sustainable manner. I would like to reiterate Pope Francis' comments from his address to the General Assembly yesterday, and I quote, "This common home of all men and women must also be built on the understanding of a certain sacredness of created nature." Such comments also resonates with the General Conference of UNESCO, which stated that each generation inheriting the earth temporarily should take care of the use of natural resources reasonably and ensure that life is not prejudiced by harmful modifications of the ecosystems, and that scientific and technological progress in all fields does not harm life on earth.
Mr. Jim Ovia, the chairman of Zenith Bank, speaking from the United Nations General Assembly. Well, joining me on the news at 10 to look at the developments at the United Nations General Assembly is VOA's Margaret Bashir. She covers the United Nations. I want to thank you so much indeed for joining us at this time. Let's get a quick sense of what has transpired. Today is day 2, of course, of the meetings that has been held in New York at the United Nations General Assembly. What do we know at this point?
Well, again, it was another day of speeches on the Sustainable Development Goals. But interestingly, I think for your audience, there was a very important meeting today on the Lake Chad Basin region. And it was about initiatives to protect young people from becoming radicalized by Islamic extremists such as Boko Haram. And this meeting was chaired by the UN Population Fund's head. And President Buhari was originally scheduled as being there, but it was the UN ambassador to the United Nations from Nigeria, Joy Agwu, who took his place. And the former Nigerian President Obasanjo also attended. And it was a very interesting session, and ideas were discussed about protecting the youth, particularly girls, because they're not getting an education because they're afraid to go to school. And Gordon Brown, who is the UN Special Envoy on Education, was there. And he, as you may know, is running a Safer Schools initiative, and he has been to Nigeria at least once now, I believe maybe even twice, working on this Safer Schools initiative in terms of protecting young girls so they can go to school.
You just spoke about the Lake Chad Basin area. How important are the leaders taking this policy to try to combat terrorism and Boko Haram, to be more specific, that has operated within that region in Chad, in Niger, parts of Nigeria, in the northeast? How important is this area to the strategy being developed by the United Nations in combating terrorism?
Well, I think it's a key area, and I think you're going to see next week that the whole concept of countering terrorism is going to be one of the real main themes we're going to see emerging here at the UN meetings. I think we're going to see a lot on the migration crisis that's plaguing Europe right now, but I think the other topic we're going to see a huge amount about is countering terrorism. And on Tuesday, President Barack Obama is chairing a summit on the idea of countering the Islamic State and on countering terrorism. And as I understand, President Buhari is going to be attending that meeting, and I believe he's going to announce that Nigeria is joining the anti-ISIL coalition. So the idea of terrorism, and especially in the Lake Chad Basin region, is going to be front and center.
Margaret, I want to thank you so much indeed for your time and your thoughts. We've been speaking to VOA's Margaret Bashir, and she covers the United Nations. Many thanks indeed. 3 suspected insurgents have died after they attacked the office of the Department of State Services, DSS, in Lokoja, the Kogi state capital. The attack also left 1 policeman dead. The military and the police were drafted in to help repel the attacks on the DSS office. Suspected Boko Haram members were also being held in custody at the DSS office.
The Department of State Service is off limits following the attack. However, the Central Bank, DSS office and the Zone 8 police headquarters are all domiciled within this vicinity.
What I'm doing, and you have to be secure.
It's a day after, and residents can now venture out to talk about the violence, the sporadic gunshots and the din of grenades. The The State Commissioner of Police, Emmanuel Ojukwu, is here with his men and speaks about the attack.
About 9:45 p.m., a security facility came under attack by some criminal elements. And the police responded, other security agencies, the military joined in the operation, were able to repel the attack. In the process, three of the attackers were shot dead, though we lost a policeman in the process. But the area is calm now. They came with improvised explosive devices. And we've been able our anti-bomb squad has swept. The area is now safe, and people are going about their lawful businesses.
The gunmen who stormed the DSS in their numbers let loose improvised explosive devices, IEDs, and AK-47 rifles. And for those who witnessed the attack, it was a terrifying affair.
We are sleeping. Me and my children, my husband is in the parlor watching telly. We just heard pa, pa, pa. But like 7 times, and I opened window, check, there's no lights, and I came to parlor and told my husband that they are shooting gun outside you.
If you are in my house and they are shooting on the road here, it's if you are shooting in my parlor. On the most serious note, it's not easy. I could not sleep till daybreak. No sleep. The gun was rampant. When they say something was rampant, we have to off all the inner lights. And I was watching at this junction for like 3 hours. The gun was rampant, non-stop.
The attackers were said to have stopped this truck, fired at the driver, and used the truck to barricade the road.
I think it's opportunistic. Maybe the truck was just passing. When they saw the truck, they hijacked it and used to block the road. If the truck wasn't here, they would have still, they have their own strategy, but we also have a counter strategy.
One of the IEDs was detonated by the Department of Anti-Bomb Squad of the police. The DSS is yet to make any official statement, but this attack, brazen as it is one which the security operatives say gives cause for concern.
In part 2, after the break, victims of the floods in Kaduna State count their losses. NEMA distributes relief materials there. That's coming up in just a moment. Stay with us.